Valerie and Peter first met at the anniversary party of a mutual friend. Valerie, still going by that name back then, had shown up as someone else's date, tagging along with one of the birthday guy's pals. She and her companion hadn't been seeing each other long, and truth be told, she wasn't particularly invested. The guy struck her as flighty, not someone to build anything meaningful with. That night, Peter asked her to dance. And just like that, something clicked between them. It wasn't dramatic, but the chemistry was undeniable. After the party, their connection deepened online. They messaged back and forth, trading stories about their favorite songs and snippets from their daily lives. When Peter heard she'd ended things with her boyfriend, he didn't hesitate. He laid his cards on the table, and before long, they were planning a wedding. At the reception, Peter's mother gave them a rather odd present. A glass table. No one quite knew why. Valerie wasn't thrilled with it, to put it mildly. But neither she nor Peter felt comfortable tossing out a gift, especially one from his mother, so it got shoved into a corner. Most days, it was buried under clutter. Valerie couldn't help but wonder what on earth possessed his mother to pick such a peculiar gift. Peter would just laugh and shrug it off, teasing her that she ought to be grateful it wasn't something even more bizarre. He knew his mother's taste ran unconventional. A glass table? Frankly, that was one of her more normal offerings. Peter worked a rotational schedule as a top-tier geodist, one of those rare professionals everyone wanted to hire. The job paid handsomely, and even when he was off somewhere remote, he made sure Valerie felt cared for. He sent her money regularly and surprised her with little luxuries. A bouquet here, her favorite takeout there. He doted on her from afar, blissfully unaware that trouble was brewing back home. Without his knowledge, Valerie had started an affair with one of his co-workers, no less. The guy was a recent hire, bold and shameless in his pursuit. Valerie, aching for affection and tired of feeling alone, eventually gave in. The guilt was there, sure. She hushed it with justifications. It's only happened a few times, she told herself. It's over now. It won't happen again. Meanwhile, she was lying straight to Peter's face, smiling at him across the room, while her lover, fresh from a night in their bed, rinsed off in their shower. It was a cruel game, one she hated herself for even as she kept playing it. When Peter returned from one of his long assignments, a trip during which Valerie had betrayed him, he walked into something strange. The cluttered glass table, usually tucked away and forgotten, was now overturned on the floor, scattered and broken like some forgotten memory. He figured Valerie must have started tidying up and gotten distracted before finishing. For a moment, he thought about texting her or offering to help, but in the end, he decided to wait. She'd be back from work soon enough. After a long drive, Peter had one go-to ritual for unwinding, sinking into a hot bath. It wasn't always his thing, but Valerie had eventually worn him down. She'd insisted on doing it properly. Bubbles, salts, the whole 9 yards. And honestly, he'd grown to like it. So, when he got home that day, he figured, why break tradition now? He turned on the tap and let the tub start to fill, then shuffled off to the kitchen to make himself a big steaming mug of tea. He was already imagining the quiet bliss of soaking in hot water. But just as he tossed the tea bag wrapper into the trash, something caught his eye, and he froze. At first, he thought his mind was playing tricks on him, a weird angle maybe, or just poor lighting. But something didn't sit right. Instinctively, Peter grabbed the closest fork from the table and poked into the bin. His heartbeat quickened, then dropped into the pit of his stomach. A cold sweat broke across his back. It wasn't a trick of the eye. It was real. Right there in the trash, Left behind like an afterthought was a torn foil packet and a used contraceptive. Peter stood motionless, mind spinning, unable to string a single clear thought together. His eyelids fluttered as if blinking would make it all vanish. Denial wrapped around him like a fog. Then the sound of water sloshing over the edge of the bathtub jolted him back to the present. He rushed to the bathroom, grabbed a towel, and frantically wiped up the mess. Though his head was still spinning, he didn't know what to do with the surge of dread building inside him. Without thinking, Peter snatched a pack of cigarettes from the shelf and stumbled toward the balcony. On the way, he passed the hallway, the same one where he and Valerie had once argued about that damn glass table. Now it sat under the warm glow of the midday sun, collecting dust like a monument to things they'd never needed. The breeze nudged the curtains, casting flickering shadows across the surface of the glass. Peter paused, and that's when he saw them. Faint, but unmistakable. Two handprints, pressed deep into the dust, broad male palms, and just below, two crescent-shaped smudges, the kind a body might leave behind. A wave of nausea hit him. Then came the rage. Without a second thought, Peter dragged over a stool and slammed it down onto the table. The crash echoed through the apartment like a thunderclap. Shards flew in all directions, leaving only the twisted metal frame behind. He didn't stop there. Consumed by a raw, pulsing fury, Peter began lobbing anything he could grab. The picture frame from their wedding, the one they'd once loved, the TV remote, Valerie's favorite vase, all of it shattered in moments, reduced to fragments of what used to be. And then, silence. Breathing heavily, heart still pounding, Peter finally stopped. He pulled a cigarette from his pocket and lit it with a trembling hand, though he barely noticed the tremor. Meanwhile, Valerie returned home, completely unaware of the storm that had erupted in her absence. She hadn't given a second thought to the remnants she'd left behind. In her mind, Peter's return meant dinner from their favorite place, a bottle of wine, and a quiet evening together. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The moment she stepped inside, she froze. The apartment was in shambles. Broken glass crunched beneath her shoes. The overturned furniture, scattered objects, and eerie silence sent a bolt of fear through her chest. Her first thought was of a robbery. Without even removing her coat, she rushed from room to room, scanning for signs of forced entry or anything missing. It wasn't until she entered the kitchen that she found him. Peter sat at the bare table, alone. In front of him, a half-empty bottle of vodka in a single shot glass. He looked up as she entered, eyes dull, expression unreadable. He was already deep into the bottle, the edges of his grief and fury dulled by alcohol. Valerie stood in the doorway, stunned. What happened? Peter blinked slowly, tilting his head as though trying to place her. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, voice unsteady. Was it supposed to be a surprise? He let out a laugh that caught somewhere between confusion and despair. That's what this was, right? A surprise? Panic rose in her chest. Peter, I forgot to take out the trash. Just let me explain. He slammed his fist onto the table, making the shot glass jump and ring against the bottle. Explain what? He snapped. I saw everything. Valerie flinched instinctively, fearing the worst. But he didn't move toward her. Even in his drunken state, he didn't raise a hand. He simply sat there, the weight of what he discovered too heavy to lift. The days that followed were a blur of tears and apologies. Valerie begged for forgiveness over and over again. She wept, promising it had been a terrible mistake, one that would never happen again. And eventually, Peter relented. He still loved her. That much hadn't changed. Somewhere inside, he found the strength to forgive. They chose to stay together, tried to rebuild what had been broken. They even had a daughter, a small light in the darkness that still lingered between them. But some cracks never fully mend. Though they did their best, talked more, tried harder, held on longer, trust is a fragile thing, and the fracture that had opened that day never quite closed. Over time, it widened, quietly and relentlessly. On his 37th birthday, Peter made the painful decision to leave. Valerie didn't fight it. Not really. She had known, somewhere deep down, that this moment would come, that some mistakes echo long after the apology. After the divorce, neither of them sought new partners. Valerie and their daughter moved in with her mother, hoping for a fresh start. Peter, meanwhile, relocated to a nearby town to rebuild his life alone. He heard, through mutual friends, that Valerie had attempted to date again twice, but both times her mother intervened. She wouldn't tolerate the idea of a stranger helping raise her granddaughter, and her fears, voiced often and forcefully, eventually drove the men away. Valerie stopped trying. Years passed. She remained single, adrift in quiet unhappiness. But through it all, her daughter was her anchor, her one enduring source of joy.